Imagine finding an ancient melted voice recorder sitting in the middle of uh, a completely dead, scorched patch of forest.
Just completely out of place.
Right. And it has no batteries inside, its casing is totally cracked, and yet the red recording light is steadily blinking and the timer is like actively ticking upward.
It's one of those things where you have to ask yourself, would you press play?
Exactly. I mean, most of us like to think we would immediately recognize the danger, and just walk away. But today we're looking at a terrifying case study in why human psychology practically guarantees you would hit that button.
Yeah, and why that simple, totally mundane action might be the last choice you ever make.
Welcome in, everyone. We know you're here because you share that burning curiosity we do, a desire to dissect thrilling, genuinely thought-provoking explorations into the unknown.
We love digging into these things.
We really do. And today, our deep dive takes us into the narrative excerpts of the echoes of the Black Hollow recording.
And our mission for this deep dive is to deconstruct exactly how this terrifying account builds, well, basically a masterclass in psychological horror.
Right, it's definitely not just a scary campfire story.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
We are going to analyze the actual mechanics of time distortion, sensory manipulation, and the architecture of a trap that literally weaponizes the human mind against itself.
To lay the groundwork here, the setting is a forest that officially does not have a name anymore,
Right.
which is spooky on its own.
Yeah, that's never a good sign.
Right. The moniker Black Hollow was completely stripped from public maps and abandoned by locals after a localized cluster of unsolved disappearances back in the 1980s.
It just became a completely dead zone, historically speaking.
Exactly. So into this officially nameless stretch of woods step four friends on an autumn camping trip. Ethan Harper, Mia, Liam, and Chloe.
Just completely ordinary hikers.
Yeah, they're expecting a routine weekend, but the forest has already laid out the bait.
And, the concept of bait in a predatory ecosystem is usually about offering a resource, right? Like food, shelter, something the prey physically needs.
Like a piece of cheese on a mousetrap.
Exactly. But in Black Hollow, the bait is intellectual. It preys on human curiosity and our inherent trust in technology.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the discovery of this bait is one of the most unsettling, incredibly specific physical scenes in the source material.
The imagery is just striking.
It really is. So Ethan spots something nearly 2 miles off the main hiking trail. It's a single pine tree standing completely isolated in the middle of a patch of dead ground.
And when you say dead ground, there is not another tree, bush, or even a blade of grass within 20 feet.
Right, and the bark of this specific pine is completely blackened, looking as though it was scorched by a localized fire years ago, despite the rest of the forest being, totally untouched.
It is a deliberate physical anomaly. I mean, it's a dead zone functioning as a spotlight for what comes next.
Yeah, and hanging from a low branch on this burned tree, suspended by a fraying piece of red wire, is that old handheld voice recorder.
The bait.
The bait. It's small, silver, and ancient. It's caked in mud, the digital screen is cracked, and one side of the plastic casing is distinctly melted by intense heat.
But here is the physical impossibility. It is still blinking.
Yes. A steady red recording light flashes in the woods, and the cracked screen displays a recording time of 7 hours, 13 minutes, and 44 seconds straight.
A continuous recording time of over 7 hours on a device that looks like it has been abandoned to the elements for years.
With absolutely no batteries inside the compartment. I mean, finding this working batteryless device out in the wild is like finding a vintage cassette Walkman half buried in the dirt that is somehow perfectly streaming a Spotify playlist.
That's a great way to put it. It instantly breaks the fundamental rules of physical reality.
It's an anachronism and an impossibility wrapped into one. So the immediate question is, why do they interact with it instead of running the other way?
Well, what's fascinating here is the psychology of the group's initial reaction. You have an artifact staring them in the face that violently contradicts the laws of physics, yet their immediate cognitive instinct is to sanitize it.
To make it make sense.
Right. They start throwing out mundane excuses. They're like, maybe a camper dropped it, or maybe it belongs to a park ranger.
Even though a park ranger wouldn't be using a melted, batteryless relic from decades ago.
Logically, their excuses are completely absurd. But psychologically, they're executing a textbook example of normalcy bias.
Normalcy bias. I love this concept.
It's fascinating. The human brain is essentially an incredibly advanced prediction engine designed to conserve energy. When it encounters a massive disruption, something that violates its established rules of reality, the prefrontal cortex just scrambles to find a mundane explanation.
Because it takes less cognitive energy to assume a camper dropped a broken recorder than it does to process the terrifying reality that the laws of physics have stopped working.
Exactly. I mean, think about your own life for a second. Have you ever been in a building when a fire alarm goes off, and your very first thought is, oh, it's just a drill?
Oh, absolutely. Or like someone burned popcorn in the break room.
Right. You sit there at your desk for an extra minute, completely ignoring a blaring warning system because your brain desperately wants to normalize the situation.
Wow, yeah. And that is the exact vulnerability being exploited here. Normalcy bias prevents panic, but it also creates a fatal delay in response time.
In Black Hollow, that desperate human need to apply logic acts as the key turning the lock. It allows the trap to be sprung because the physical impossibility of the recorder is merely the lure to get them to stop walking.
The true snare is the audio itself.
Yes, the audio is the payload.
Right, so the moment Liam reaches out and presses play, the nature of the anomaly shifts from the physical object to the audio. The threshold is crossed.
And what comes out of that tiny speaker is just gelling.
It's a loud, crackling burst of static, followed immediately by heavy, panicked breathing. A man's voice, violently shaking, whispers into the microphone, "Please, if someone finds this, we're lost."
He describes walking in circles for hours, claiming the trail itself is actually changing.
And then another voice urgently whispers, "Don't say our names." And layered underneath all of that, beneath the static and the snapping branches, are circling footsteps.
And note the sound design of the recording there. It's highly specific. The footsteps aren't approaching the microphone, they are circling it.
Like a predator.
Exactly. It establishes an invisible perimeter of dread.
The group is visibly unnerved. Ethan tries to force a laugh, suggesting it's some elaborate prank left behind by teenagers. But the reality of the forest has already shifted. It has gone completely unnaturally silent.
No bird calls, no wind in the leaves, no insects, just dead silence.
Liam, who is thoroughly disturbed at this point, hits the fast-forward button. The tape screeches, skipping ahead through time, and the audio completely devolves. They hear a woman sobbing uncontrollably, thick branches snapping violently, and a man shouting, "Turn off the light!"
Followed by agonizing, prolonged screams.
The visceral kind of screams that indicate a horrific death.
It is a concentrated sensory assault. And observing their reaction reveals something critical here. The audio is not merely a passive recording of past events. It functions as an active catalyst.
What do you mean by active catalyst?
Well, the moment they consume the audio, their environment begins to actively degrade. It's reacting to them listening.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because as soon as Mia manages to shut the recorder off, Ethan insists they leave the woods entirely and take the device to the authorities. But Liam is frozen.
Because the voices on the tape explicitly mentioned Black Hollow, the forbidden name that locals refuse to utter.
Right, so they immediately turn around to head back to camp, but the geography of the trail is already breaking down. The trail markers look altered. The physical paths twist in impossible ways.
The space itself is warping.
Yeah, Ethan suddenly realizes they have passed the exact same fallen, moss-covered log 3 separate times, even though they have been walking in a strict straight line.
They are experiencing spatial looping. The physical space is actively rearranging itself into a labyrinth, trapping them in a localized anomaly where geometry no longer functions normally.
And then the recorder turns itself back on, automatically.
Inside the bag, right?
Yep, it's sitting right inside Mia's backpack, and the red light is glaring again. But the audio playback has changed. It sounds closer, and underneath the layer of static, they hear voices again. But this time, it's their own voices.
The mimicry is faint and distorted, but the cadence and tone are unmistakably them.
They hear Mia whispering, "Do you hear that?" Followed by Liam nervously joking, "Probably deer." It is the exact conversation they had literally 30 seconds prior.
Which is just a terrifying realization.
Yeah. Ethan, utterly terrified, grabs the recorder and rewinds the tape further. And what they hear next destroys their understanding of reality. They hear their own future footsteps.
They hear themselves walking into a trap.
Exactly. They hear Ethan's voice trembling, saying, "We need to leave now," followed immediately by their own future screams.
Now, I have to push back here because this is where the logic of time travel or like predestination usually falls apart for me.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Right. Wait. When Ethan rewinds it and they hear their own future voices, why don't they just change their actions? If you hear yourself say a specific sentence on a cursed tape, couldn't you just refuse to speak? Does hearing the tape somehow force the future to happen?
It is a fundamental question, and answering it gets to the absolute core of how this trap operates. Does the tape predict the future, or does it dictate the future? The text strongly implies it is the latter. It weaponizes determinism.
Determinism meaning the philosophical concept that all events are completely determined by previously existing causes. Precisely. If you are a determinist, you believe free will is basically an illusion. Every action is just a reaction to a previous state of affairs.
Okay, so how does that apply to the tape?
In Black Hollow, the tape acts as the ultimate antecedent cause.
Yeah.
It creates a paralyzing inevitability. Hearing your own impending screams completely paralyzes the executive functioning of the brain.
So the sheer terror overrides their ability to make rational choices.
Neuroscience shows us that extreme fear triggers an amygdala hijack. The brain's threat response center completely bypasses the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for logical planning and complex decision-making.
Wow. So you just stop thinking.
You lose the cognitive capacity to formulate a new plan, you stop acting, and you strictly react. The tape actively traps you in a state of psychological paralysis.
Yeah.
You become so hyper-fixated on avoiding the recorded outcome that every single snap of a branch in reality perfectly aligns with the timeline of the tape. By explicitly telling the victims what they are going to do, the trap strips away their cognitive belief that they can do anything else. The loss of agency becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It effectively murders their free will before it murders them physically. And as this timeline completely disintegrates, the loss of agency shifts from temporal to interpersonal. The very fabric of their group begins to dissolve.
Things break down fast here.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because we finally get the physical reveal of the threat, the tape suddenly jumps forward again, and future Liam screams through the speaker, "Don't look at the trees."
A command that functions as a warning, delivered precisely a second too late to be useful.
Of course, they immediately look up, and in the deepening darkness of the woods, they finally see them. Tall, impossibly thin shapes standing completely unnaturally still between the pines.
And the description of them is so unsettling.
Yeah, they are described as being longer and leaner than humans, their skin or outer layer blending almost perfectly into the texture of the tree trunks themselves. They are just watching silently.
Just waiting.
And drifting through the forest is this massive, low, rhythmic breathing sound that is too large to be an animal, and certainly isn't human.
The entities are finally making themselves visible, but only because the psychological snare is already fully closed around the group.
And the recorder crackles again, delivering what I consider the single most jarring, brilliant detail in the entire source text. Through the static, future Mia is heard sobbing, and she says, "It copied Aaron first."
The inclusion of that specific name completely shatters the narrative up to this point.
Because Aaron isn't there. The source material explicitly stated in the very beginning that the camping group consists of Ethan, Mia, Liam, and Chloe. 4 people. There is no Aaron.
This raises an important question about exactly how these entities hunt. They are clearly not just physical predators that chase down prey through the brush. Their primary hunting mechanism is altering human memory itself.
Which is terrifying.
Completely. When Mia hears the name Aaron on the tape, a horrifying realization suddenly washes over the surviving group. They cannot remember hearing, seeing, or speaking to Chloe for the past hour.
They know, factually, that they entered the forest as a group of 4, but their episodic memory of her presence has been surgically removed. Let's break down episodic memory quickly.
Sure. Episodic memory is our internal autobiography. It's the recollection of specific events, situations, and experiences in our past.
Right.
The group retains their semantic memory, the factual knowledge that Chloe exists and is part of their trip, but the episodic memory of her walking beside them for the last hour is completely gone.
It is like a corrupted file directory on a computer hard drive. The entities didn't just delete the physical person, they hacked into the group's cognitive directory and overwrote the pathway, so the brain didn't even realize a piece of data was missing.
Exactly.
The entities literally erased a group member from their minds to separate her from the herd, and no one even noticed the silence.
It is an incredibly sophisticated form of camouflage. We usually think of camouflage in biology as physical, a chameleon blending into a branch, or in this case, the entities blending into the pine bark. But this is cognitive camouflage.
Cognitive camouflage, I like that.
If a predator has the ability to edit your reality in real time, to actively delete your memory of your own friends standing next to you, resistance becomes impossible. You can't fight an enemy that controls your perception of reality.
Which makes Chloe's sudden reappearance absolutely horrifying. Out of the darkness, Chloe's voice calls out, "Guys!" From behind them, they spin around, and she is standing perfectly still between two trees about 20 yards away.
But everything about her is wrong.
Right. She is smiling far too widely, her facial muscles strain. She isn't blinking. Liam shakily asks how she got all the way over there without making a sound, and she just slowly tilts her head at an unnatural angle and states, "You left me."
The mimicry is physical now, but it is noticeably imperfect. The uncanny valley effect, where something looks almost human but not quite right, triggers a primal revulsion. It shatters whatever small amount of cohesion the group had left.
And right on cue, coordinating perfectly with the physical threat, the recorder screeches violently. Future Ethan screams from the tiny speaker, "That's not her."
And that's when it all falls apart.
The fake Chloe immediately breaks her unnatural stillness and rushes at them with terrifying speed. The group does the only thing a human brain can do in that state of absolute overload. They scatter, they run frantically, blindly into the dark, completely separated from one another.
Which is the tactical objective of the entities. With their memories compromised, their trust broken, and their friends replaced by physical mimics, the survivors are isolated and stripped of their collective strength. They're being systematically herded.
Herded toward a predestined conclusion. This brings us to the architecture of the closed loop, the final desperate run. The narrative narrows down to Ethan sprinting alone through the dark, branches tearing at his clothes.
He is totally isolated now.
He is still clutching the recorder, and the playback has become a chorus of horrors. Stolen voices echo from everywhere in the surrounding forest. He hears something mimicking Mia screaming in the distance, and Liam shouting for help from a completely different direction.
The forest itself is playing back the audio of their terror, turning the trees into massive organic speakers.
And one by one, the screams on the tape and in the woods abruptly go silent.
Until only Ethan remains, both in physical reality and on the timeline of the recording.
Future Ethan whispers on the tape, "I'm alone now." And then a few seconds later, they're using our voices. The tape skips one final time. Future Ethan cries out, "I found the tree."
And that's the gut punch.
Yeah, current Ethan stops running instantly, because right there, standing directly ahead of him in the dark, is the exact same burned pine tree sitting in the dead patch of dirt.
The spatial looping reaches its climax. The geographic impossibility is absolute.
He had been running blindly, fueled by adrenaline, for nearly an hour. He ran in a straight line away from the Chloe mimic, yet somehow, the non-Euclidean geometry of the forest folded back in on itself and fed him right back to the center of the web.
He is standing exactly where he started.
And the tape plays its final, agonizing moments. Future Ethan whispers into the microphone, "If someone finds this, don't listen to the tape." This is followed by the heavy sound of dozens of footsteps slowly circling him.
And then, the ultimate chilling whisper.
Spoken in a low, resonant voice directly into the microphone, "We heard you recording."
The jaws of the trap officially snap shut.
So, what does this all mean? The tape immediately ends, the forest goes completely silent, and Ethan notices one final, sinister detail before the narrative cuts off entirely. Hanging from the branch of that burned tree is a fresh piece of red wire, swinging gently in the dark.
Waiting for the next victim. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains the closed-loop ecosystem of Black Hollow perfectly. The forest didn't simply kill Ethan, Mia, Liam, Chloe, and presumably Aaron, whoever he was in a previous iteration of their memory.
I processed them.
Yes, it digested their voices, their physiological terror, and their cognitive memories, and it wove those elements into the next iteration of the trap. The mass disappearances in the 1980s suggest this isn't an isolated incident. It is a perpetual machine.
A localized anomaly of mimicry and memory erasure that sustains its own existence by turning its previous victims into the very bait that lures the next group of hikers.
Exactly.
The source material notes that the park rangers found the group's abandoned campsite completely empty the next morning. No physical trace of Ethan or the others was ever discovered in the woods. They just became another layer of stolen voices in the timber.
But the text notes something deeply unsettling in its final paragraph. Modern hikers and rangers still report hearing these exact phenomena deep inside Black Hollow after sunset. The sounds of terrified voices, branches snapping, and people running.
Which is just incredibly eerie.
It is, and it leaves you with a lingering, deeply provocative scientific concept to mull over regarding how this trap functions.
Oh, let's hear it.
Since that final voice on the tape explicitly stated, "We heard you recording," we have to ask, is the trap triggered specifically by observation?
Wait, like in physics?
Yeah, in quantum mechanics, the observer effect dictates that the mere act of observing a particle changes its behavior. What if these entities exist in a passive state of dormancy, and the very human impulse to document, to hit record, or even to just listen to a recording is the exact mechanical trigger that summons them from a state of possibility into a state of reality?
Oh, wow.
It's not that the woods are inherently hunting you, it's that looking too closely at the anomaly invites the anomaly to look back at you.
That is horrifying. The impulse to document your life becomes the very thing that ends it. Think about your own habits for a second. Think about how much you rely on your smartphone, your camera, your voice notes to capture your reality and prove you exist.
We constantly observe ourselves.
We document everything. What if that constant stream of digital observation is exactly what an entity like this needs to lock onto your location? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the dark, time-bending woods of Black Hollow.
It's been a wild ride.
It really has. The next time you pull out your phone to record something strange you see in nature, take a moment to consider if the environment wants to be recorded. Keep questioning the world around you, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.